Welcome, everyone, to Rutgers at the voice of college football. Well, what a night it has been. Rutgers falling to Kansas State 44-41 after having a 17-point lead in the second half. We're going to talk about that game in detail, and we're going to have three segments tonight. First, we're going to, of course, talk about the game against Kansas State. Unbelievable loss. Second, we're going to have an assessment of, we're going to talk about, we're going to assess the season, assess the players and Coach Schiano. Third segment, we're going to talk about the first round of the college football playoffs. And then we are going to offer some predictions for the quarterfinal games. I really want to hear from you guys tonight about what the hell happened with Rutgers. And sure enough, we already have somebody waiting to discuss this game and whatever else he wants to discuss. Our good friend Spaz is here. Let's bring Spaz to the stage. Always good to see Spaz. How are you doing tonight, Spaz?
Oh, not bad, man. Just got done watching that abysmal debacle of a bowl game. Reminded me of Oregon versus Kansas State several years back. Kind of gave me flashbacks.
Exactly. What happened tonight? Rutgers is up 34-17, and then all of a sudden they decide not to play defense. It's terrible.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It was like they were just rolling right along, and all of a sudden it was like they just decided to stop playing, period. Their offense just went in the tank, and their defense looked like Swiss cheese out there on those runs. That guy was just like weaving all over the field, and Rutgers guys are like, diving in air.
Yeah, and the worst part about this is that earlier in the season, Rutgers had a very highly ranked rush defense and was, considered very respectable, overall defensively. But tonight, I don't know, maybe they say there's a dry heat in Phoenix. Maybe the heat got to them. Maybe they had jet lag, but whatever happened, it was really a shocker to see them give up 44 points and be up by 17 and blow it. Now, you're an Oregon fan, so you don't have the same dismay that I do at this point. You probably had a wonderful Christmas, looking forward to Oregon in the quarterfinals against Ohio State. Me, I have to sit here with a 7-6 Rutgers team. And I'm in New Jersey at the moment, in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. Bergen County, for those of you who don't know New Jersey. About 20 minutes from the city. I don't need this. This is ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. And Coach Schiano, like I've said on previous shows, it's about time you're going to have to come on the show. All right? You're going to have to come on to Rutgers at the voice of college football. We're going to need you, to discuss the season with you, the future of Rutgers, because we're dedicated to supporting Rutgers football. And, Coach, we're looking forward to having you on the show. But, Spaz, do you think Rutgers football is just going to be mediocre going forward?
I thought they took a step last year with that bowl victory over Miami, and I thought they were going to have a decent season this year. They started out good, and then all of a sudden they just typical Greg Schiano, man. They start hot and fizzle. It's been his history.
They fizzled, and I'll tell you, this game, as I'm watching, I'm thinking, what a great game this is. We're going to win. Yeah, this game reminded me a little bit of my alma mater, USC, in 2006, when we were up by 12 against the Texas Longhorns in the Rose Bowl, looking for the three-peat, the dynasty, and then Vince Young takes over, and on a 4th and 6 with about 22 seconds left, scores the winning touchdown. This one doesn't hurt as much, but still, as a New Jersey resident, this is unacceptable for Rutgers because they can never get over the hump. And they had the schedule this year to do it.
Yeah, and next year they got us coming out there to blow you guys up even more.
Well, now, Spaz, I'm glad you brought that up because everybody in the audience should know that Oregon, the Ducks, will be coming to Piscataway, New Jersey next season. And I am going to personally buy tickets for Spaz and show Spaz the real parts of northern New Jersey, the parts that you don't see in the tour guides. But I see some people in the comments section. Hey, Mac, how you doing? I see you. We'll bring you on shortly. Duriel, it really was a microcosm of this football season. Will ND, I appreciate it. But yes, indeed, we covered. But Jackson, yeah, you make a good point. We just can't seem to make it over the hump, and it really was a heartbreaker. Mr. GTA, how you doing? Good to see you all. So, on this dark and dreary night in New Jersey, as Rutgers prepares to fly back, one must wonder what next season is going to entail, given that we have the Ducks at home, and we go to Ohio State, and we go to Washington. Could be a tough year. And I've always said we need to start buying really good players, those 4 and 5 stars. We need to recruit better. We need to pay players. We need to develop players more effectively. But, since Spaz, you're an Oregon fan, so I would be remiss on this show if I didn't ask you as an Oregon fan what you think about the Rose Bowl against the Buckeyes.
It's going to be a tough game, man. It just, 1-point game out here at Autzen earlier this year. Granted, I do believe we left several points out there on the field, missed field goal, 4th down stop in the red zone, the missed interception in the first quarter that they called a catch. Just a couple of things that should have made that game more along the lines of a 10-point win. So you just don't know. After what Ohio State did last week to Tennessee, I was a little impressed with that just because their defense was pretty rock solid last week. Granted, Tennessee's still trying to figure out that offense with Nico and, a redshirt freshman. And I think they'll be better next year. But that Ohio State team looked pretty well oiled last week coming off of that Michigan embarrassment.
Yeah, I agree with you. They completely dominated Tennessee, and that kind of surprised me. But they are stout up front. Their defense is one of the best in the nation, probably along with Texas. I think it's going to be a close game, but when I saw Oregon's offense against Penn State, Tez Johnson is the receiver that probably God couldn't cover. He's that good. And, I don't mean to offend anybody of religious persuasion. I'm Catholic too. But, hey, this is the best receiver I've seen in a long time in college. Would you agree?
Yeah. He knows how to run routes, and he knows how to get open. It doesn't matter what coverage or who's covering him. He seems to find holes in those gaps and knows where to attack the defenses.
Yeah.
Last game, it was Evan Stewart and Oregon going over to the top on Denzel Burke, who's been touted as a possible top 5 pick in this year's draft, and they just burnt him that whole game. And I don't see that happening again. However, I think maybe Oregon tries to attack Caleb Downs or over the middle some. Maybe we get our run game going a little more.
Yeah.
I do think our defense is definitely solid. Yeah, their offensive line has some issues, and they seem to have kind of tightened them up. But they didn't face Jordan Birch and Mateo Longalele last game. So they're in for a defensive nightmare up front.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's going to be an amazing game. And I see in the comment box, Mr. GTA, ever since you started this show, did you start becoming a Rutgers fan, even though you're a USC fan? You can do 2 things at once. Yes, I graduated from the University of Southern California, and I am a Trojan, but I grew up in New Jersey. And I've always been a Rutgers fan because I'm a New Jersey native, and I've always supported the program. and we're hoping to grow this channel to bring attention to Rutgers football. And I just made an executive decision this second. We have another caller waiting, but instead of Spaz leaving, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to bring everybody on because this should be a party, maybe a pity party for Rutgers fans. We're going to bring Mac on. Mac, it's good to see you, Mac. I know you've called in before, and you've never met Spaz before, but he's one of our top college football analysts, an Oregon Duck fan. And I don't know what your team is, but give me your thoughts on what went down tonight.
Well, I took down some notes here actually as I was watching the game on a YouTube live stream. I really want to talk about the fourth quarter and, specifically the last 7 minutes of the fourth quarter. Rutgers comes into that quarter about,
go ahead.
2 touchdowns ahead. Everyone's thinking this is a ball game. Everybody in the comments on the live stream was saying that Rutgers had it in the bag. And then you have their defense absolutely fall apart. That incredible drive. They had one run for, I don't remember, like 20, 30 yards. They get the touchdown. What's his name? Something like Flip Dipsy or something from Statesboro, Georgia, not far from where I'm from.
Flip Dipsy, yes.
He was down in the end zone. That wasn't good for their defense. Then they come back. They get a sack for a loss. They punt the ball. Kansas State runs it back and scores again. They get the 2-point conversion. This is what's happening here. Their defense completely crumbled like a sand castle on the Jersey Shore. What's going on?
Yes, I mean, speaking of the Jersey Shore, if anybody, whoever's watching tonight, please do go to Seaside Heights, one of the best places on earth. If you've ever seen the Jersey Shore, the TV show, it's just like that. You'll love it. Mac, it's funny you say that because yesterday was Christmas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a really, really horrible Christmas present, and I had to act like I liked it. Okay, and I was like, I hate when my siblings do this. They get me something that for some reason they think I'll like, and I have to open it and say, "Oh, this is really nice," and then I'm mortified. So I was looking to this Rutgers game for a little reprieve from the bad mood that I was in, and then we crumbled in the fourth quarter, like you said. I mean, wide open receivers for Kansas State, especially the running back for Kansas State. I believe Dylan Edwards, 2 touchdowns, 18 carries, 196 yards. Avery Johnson, 3 touchdowns, 195 yards on 15 to 30 passing. So my explanation for you would probably be that Rutgers this year suffered a tremendous amount of injuries. They had 8 players suffer season-ending injuries, and about 6 other players missed time during the season, including Don Bosco prep grad Kyle Monangai. I think that was exposed tonight against the Kansas State team that has good team speed and a dual threat quarterback. And I think in the fourth quarter they just gave out, and that's what I think happened.
Why did they?
I think you're right there.
Why did they not use that running back that had all them yards? Was he just sitting out because of going pro?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought that up, Spaz, because Kyle Monangai, another Don Bosco prep. He's a Don Bosco prep grad. He played he was our rival in high school. I went to Bergen Catholic. He opted out because he was preparing for the NFL draft.
But yet he was in pads on the sidelines.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was trying to be there symbolically or something. As far as all of you opt-outs go, you can kiss my – well, I don't want to get upset. All of you opt-outs, you're a bunch of phonies. Play the damn game. Be loyal to your team. Oh, you're afraid of injury? Hey, injuries can happen at the combine. They can happen during, camp. Give me a break. Go play the game. So – we were without Kyle Monangai tonight, but Kansas State, too, was without DJ Giddens, their leading rusher. But I'm not a big fan of these opt-outs. And, Mac, I think you would agree with me, right? We need old-school, tough men in football, not these snowflakes who are opting out and making business decisions. It's nonsense.
I think you're completely right there. Football used to be a well-respected man's game, and now we have people sitting out and players in the NFL wearing guardian caps so that they don't get concussions. I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, maybe I'll sit out the show.
I can't.
What'd you say, Spaz?
I broke my fingernail.
Yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, what are the odds of you getting hurt in this game? Well, there's always a chance you're going to get hurt and suffer a season-ending injury. I believe it was it Frank, or what was his name, Gore, in Miami in 2002 against Miami. Tragic, unfortunate, but hey, you should be living to play the game. And you know, I will say this though, you know, the holiday season is one of those things where it brings people together, and yet we have another caller here, and I'm not going to throw people out. I'm going to bring them in. So we have Duriel joining us. Duriel, always good to hear from you. Always gives good, intelligent comments. I believe Duriel is an SEC fan. But Duriel, if you can explain why Rutgers lost or whatever your thoughts are, please do.
Rutgers lost because they don't know how to guard the running back. Just put a flat, and then Rutgers probably wins this game. I mean, no resistance to him. Every single play in the fourth quarter is like he's wide open. Kansas State quarterback throws it to him. Nobody's within 20 yards. I mean, it was just embarrassing to watch because it was over and over and over again this was happening. And then it felt like it was just the momentum of it. It's like everything that could have gone wrong in the fourth quarter did for Rutgers. And I don't know if this is like a psychological problem with Greg Schiano or whatnot, but it feels like when one thing goes wrong for him, just the whole thing goes wrong for him.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And sometimes I wonder what kind of adjustments did they make? I mean, they're up 34-17. They're pretty effectively containing Avery Johnson, and then the dam breaks, and they give up how many points in the fourth quarter? Like Max said, the fourth quarter
20,
was a nightmare.
30
The only
total
thing
in the
worse,
second half.
terrible. The only thing worse than that second half was the present I got yesterday from my one of my siblings. I mean, really. I mean,
did you get a new haircut, Adam, for your Christmas? Because your hair, I know, looks different than previously.
yeah, I got my hair cut, and I regret who cut my hair because
Went to Mario's.
you know, I look like a wannabe Mel Gibson. But regardless of that, Mac, what do you think is the future for Rutgers? Should we just sit here in New Jersey on this cold night and say we're going to accept mediocrity, or is there a chance that Rutgers can finally get over that hump?
Well, I don't know. I remember we talked about earlier in the season how their defense was really going to make them a force in the conference. But their defense, was primarily comprised of seniors. After this showing, I don't know if they had those seniors in or not. If the seniors were not in, that's a terrible omen for next season. I think they're going to once again become the laughingstock of the conference if they cannot pull it together and have a semblance of a defensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially after giving up this many points to Kansas State and after having a pretty favorable schedule this year.
Yeah, that's the point, Adam, I wanted to bounce off of. Next year they play Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State. I mean, we can just chalk those up as 3 L's right now.
So you don't think that Rutgers goes into the horseshoe in Columbus and stuns the Buckeyes?
No, gosh no. Gosh no.
You don't think that Rutgers and Piscataway, with Spaz watching in the stands from a great vantage point, stops the Ducks from quacking?
No. They're going to be waddling their way into the end zone.
This is why we need Coach Schiano on the show. Coach, we're going to have to get it from the source. What's going to happen next year? Because, and I see Will ND in the chat, good comments. And, with the opt-outs, when I think of opt-outs, all I think about is Florida State last year. Give me a break. Oh, you didn't get the number 4 spot, so everybody abandons the team and sends the second stringers out to the slaughter. Forget it. Mac, what's your team? Let me guess. University of Connecticut.
You could not be more wrong. Take another guess. Come on, the accent, surely, something.
Prairie View?
Do I sound like I'm from? No, the Bulldogs.
Oregon State?
No.
Wait, you said the Bulldogs?
Bulldogs, Georgia.
Is this yet another Georgia fan coming on the show? Another Georgia fan?
Mm-hmm. I believe there's another one. I believe a guy named Ryan who calls in fairly often. Another another Georgia fan.
Yes, Ryan always gives impressive calls, but he's also a Bulldog. So are you saying that Georgia's going to win the national title? Dariel, I would love to hear your opinion on this since you're an SEC guy.
Well, Georgia, I've said since the bracket came out, has by far the easiest path to the national title game. I mean, It's basically cupcake city for them. I mean, when Penn State, the ultimate pretender outside of Notre Dame, is the toughest team you're going to face, I mean, it's just embarrassing the way the playoff structure is formatted. I don't care who's the quarterback. Mac looks like a good guy. He could be the quarterback for Georgia, and I would still pick him over Notre Dame and Penn State. That's how little confidence I have in those teams. So it's dynasty mode or bust for Georgia, in my opinion, this year, because Oregon has a gauntlet they're going to have to face. Same with Texas. They're going to get beaten up by the Oregon-Ohio State winner. So to me, it's Georgia should be the favorite than everybody else based on how the bracket is.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
That's coming from a Kentucky guy, though.
Yeah. Spaz, you've got to play Ohio State. You're underdogs. You're underdogs. How's that fair?
You're right. Yeah.
And then congrats, you can play Texas if you win. Because I'm not counting Arizona State. Arizona State is not even a cupcake. They're just a mushed-in cupcake at this point. They're just complete joke. They shouldn't even
throw in.
Exactly. So you got to play Ohio State, then Texas, and then if you win, you get Georgia. I'm sorry, there's no team in the country I would pick to win that game. No team.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Georgia's going to be that phenomenal on offense because we don't know much about this quarterback.
They don't have to be phenomenal. It's just because the path you have to get there is so brutal. I believe you're going to be banged up and injured and hurt and bruised into that game where Georgia can basically save their plays, rest their players all the way to the finals, in my opinion. Like this game against Notre Dame. I mean, it's only 2.5 or 2 at this point. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia wins this by 10, 14 points. I mean, they've never lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the ultimate pretender, and they're going to do what pretenders do. They're going to just completely roll over.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's what everybody wants is, downgrade the underdog.
Well, Spaz, I don't know how do you like the 12-team playoff? Have you been an advocate for this?
No, not really. But I mean, I kind of like it, but I think they need to either go to 8 or 16.
Oh gosh, if we go to 16, my gosh.
No buys.
No.
Everybody plays.
That's right. We need Iowa to play Ohio State. We need to figure out who the better team is between those two.
Iowa's not playing Ohio State. Iowa would lose by 100. And by the way, in the comment box, that guy, Trev, how you doing? Thanks for being here. You say this Mac guy gives me bad vibes. Well, first of all, I'll say I like people who give me bad vibes. I think that's a good thing. It's the people who give me good vibes that are usually the problem. But that's another discussion. Will ND says he's going to have to call in. Well, we look forward to your call, a Notre Dame fan. Now, listen, here's my message to the Irish. You're finished. Forget it. There's no way you're going to beat Georgia. Touchdown, Jesus, forget it. All right? Armageddon's going to happen against Georgia, and that's going to be Arab Parsesian is not the coach anymore, okay? Lou Holtz is not the coach anymore, although I hear he's lurking around South Carolina. But anyway, I digress. I mean, Notre Dame is a good team. Notre Dame will not beat Georgia. And, Mac, you're a Georgia fan. Who is this outlaw called Gunnar Stockton?
I think that's a great question. Many of us are wondering it right now, but I will gladly take him over chronically ill Carson Beck, who we have been stuck with. So, you know what? I'm not complaining. I'm happy to see what he brings to the table.
Are you saying physically ill or mentally ill?
He kind of looks like he might have some sort of underlying ailment that has plagued him for his whole life.
I've heard that all year.
That's not the problem with Carson Beck. I'll tell you what the problem with Carson Beck is. It's the girlfriend. He got the girlfriend, and he became obsessed with the girlfriend in Florida, and he got distracted. Now, that's not the same relationship.
Women have been plaguing the entire Bulldogs team. It's women and drunk driving are their biggest two opponents this year.
Oh, there's drunk driving involved too?
Well, maybe not this year, but historically.
So let me ask you this question to both of you, to all three of you. Who wins the national championship? By the way, Mac, you kind of strike me more of as like a Miami of Ohio football fan.
Well, I go to this wonderful small liberal arts school in Middle Georgia. We don't have a football team, actually. We're more focused on the academics, but we're about 2 hours south of Athens. So, we're kind of all shoehorned in with the Bulldogs.
Well, I'll let you know a little secret. I actually work in Georgia, but I'm Jersey through and through. Although on the last show, the person who said that I was the worst ambassador for New Jersey in history, forget you too. You can go to Notre Dame and you can lose with them. Duriel, I keep thinking, what if South Carolina were in the playoff? What do you think?
I think they would have provided a better product than Tennessee, Clemson, SMU, and Indiana. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think what is the goal of this playoffs? Is it an intellectual experiment where everybody gets around and says, well, to objectify the national championship, we need all the deserving teams in there that are 11-1, or do we want entertaining, good, competitive football games? I'm in the latter. I want to see good football. I want to be entertained. I want to have some escapism from the real world for a few hours. And I'm sorry, but when the game is 21-0 after 6 minutes, that's not exciting to me. And people are not going to be watching these games forever because Tennessee has always been a perennial pretender. They're not on the same level as Ohio State or Oregon or Georgia. They just aren't. There's only like 3 or 4 or 5 teams every year that can win the national championship based on their coaching, performance, and talent rankings. So to expand it to 12 and say they're in the playoffs, they have no chance. Boise State has no chance of winning the national championship this year. I know they're in the playoffs and technically have a chance, but nobody actually believes it. So why do we all have to play this game of pretend? And it's like, well, they're in, so therefore they have no. It's embarrassing. It's a joke.
I completely agree with you. And I've always said we should have 4 teams in the playoff, but there should be a play-in game for the 4 spot between 4 and 5. And now they want to expand it to 16. Who are we going to have in the playoffs now? The university.
Miami, Alabama, and South Carolina would have got in.
Miami has no class. None. They lost to Syracuse. And I don't want Alabama.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they lost to an engineering school.
I went to that game, stormed the field. Great game.
You stormed the field? I thought you were a Georgia fan. Now I'm starting to get concerned.
A family on both sides. So,
well, I want to tell you guys, we have a special treat tonight because Touchdown Jesus has graced us with his presence. We have Will ND here, a Notre Dame fan. I've never met one, so this is going to be an exciting experience for me.
Hey, gentlemen.
Will, thanks so much for coming on the show. What's on your mind?
I mean, I just heard Duriel dogging Notre Dame, so I had to come on.
I've been speaking facts about Notre Dame because for the last 30 years, they've been an irrelevant football program. I'm sorry, hardly any of us were alive during the black and white TV days, okay? Back when silent motion pictures were the #1 movie. That's when I need to watch Notre Dame. Back when Army and Navy had respectable football programs and were just thought of service academy football programs.
Oh, well, hold on a second. They did win a national title in 1912, the same year the Titanic sank.
Yes.
And they won one in 1988. I think they won
77, 72.
Yeah, let's give some. We're going to give some respect to the Notre Dame fans, and Notre Dame does have a storied history. So,
yeah, back when the Bee Gees were one of the best bands in that era, that's when they were relevant.
Will, what do you have to say about this?
I mean, we had significantly worse teams against Georgia, and we lost by 1 score in 17-19. So, I feel like everyone's saying we're going to get blown off the field. I think it'll be a competitive 1-score game till the end.
I agree.
We may win, we may lose, but
I think it's going to be competitive. You want to know why? Because I think this Notre Dame team is different than the last. I think it's their best team in years because of their defense and their running backs. And they're physical. They're going to be tough. It's going to be close. It's not going to be a blowout.
Hey, Will, with Carson Beck out, I've predicted in my shows that you guys are going to beat Georgia and shock the world. Hey,
who was the person in September? I was called delusional. People said that I needed help. When I said Notre Dame would win the national championship, I predicted Notre Dame to win it all.
Could happen, Adam. Very well could happen.
You said that, and we all called you a massive Cro-Magnon. It's not gonna happen.
Hey, I'm only 49 years old. When I turn 50, you can say that about me. But look, I mean,
I've seen Georgia Tech gash Georgia running the ball, and Georgia Tech does not have as good of players as Notre Dame.
If we want to go, listen, a Notre Dame fan cannot go to the worst data point on any discussion this year.
Well, no, but
you lost to Northern Illinois. That's the ultimate trump card for worst data point. Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, if they run on Georgia, we should be able to run on Georgia and stay in the game through running the ball.
Well, Northern Illinois.
I'm just saying. With our O-line, we should be able to open up holes against Georgia. Because Texas didn't do smash mouth football like Notre Dame's going to try to do. They try to do rinky dink stuff. So,
you know what impressed me about Notre Dame? How they manhandled Indiana. I mean, the Notre Dame is tough. That defense is tough. But Mac, the thing that I worry about with Georgia, and Jackson, I see you in the comment box. Thanks for being here. I'm so happy that you said you thought I was younger than 49 because yesterday we were opening presents at Christmas.
I would have won 40, honestly, Adam. I would have won 40.
Really? Well, my mom's friend said I looked 50. And I said, I just opened up a horrible present. Now I got to hear this. I mean, Jesus. Mac, I think the problem with Georgia is this. I think they have a porous defense. The defense is very weak and cannot stop the run, and that's what's going to be the downfall of Georgia.
We're going to have to see, Only time will tell. This team has been so inconsistent. It's been such a roller coaster for Georgia fans all year. There's really, I think, no way to predict how this game is going to go.
Well, I admit that I said that half kidding.
Stressful for us, but fun for everyone else.
Here's how I think Notre Dame beats Georgia. If they beat Georgia, they have to run right at them and just beat them in the trenches. And, then we have Spaz in Oregon. A very enigmatic Ducks team that wins 16-10 against Wisconsin. Sports Talk with Austin. You thought I was 27. Well, in fact, I am, or I was. So, how does Oregon only score 16 at Camp Randall, but mow over Penn State with 45 points?
Playing 8 weeks in a row. Injuries and on the road in a hostile environment in November. That's how.
You know what game I would love to see? I would love to see Notre Dame at Kentucky, because here's the thing about Kentucky this year. Kentucky goes on the road into Oxford and beats Ole Miss and almost knocks off Georgia on their home field. So, Duriel, what do you think is the deal with Kentucky? Because they showed the potential to beat top 10 teams, and they did beat one, but then they kind of fell off. What's the deal with them?
Inconsistency everywhere, and then when the wheels fell off, they just completely bursted into a million pieces. I mean, anything that could go wrong did for us. Players' injuries, players dropping passes. It was bad. We bolted on our quarterback halfway. We had no confidence in anybody. Team, I believe, gave up about halfway through the year, which isn't surprising because we've had players give up before. So,
yeah. Well, at least you're not a Rutgers fan.
No, I would rather be. At least you made a bowl game.
Yeah, we made a bowl game, but I got the feeling that we reverted back to the same old Rutgers. Like you said, it seemed like a microcosm, not just of the season, but of the program historically.
At least their running game looks like it'll stay good.
Right.
Kansas State's a decent team. I put them in. I think they're one of the 30 best teams in the country. I mean, Avery Johnson's a legit quarterback. They had most of their players playing in the game. It wasn't like they were playing their 2s and 3s.
That's a good point. So, Mac,
Kentucky is a basketball school, so.
Kentucky, do you remember that Elite Eight game, Daryl? I was so mad at the refs after that game, man. We were so
Which
close
one?
to making the Final
We've
Four.
been in so many. You have to clarify for us.
The
You know,
Elite
like
Eight
my
game.
Kansas City Chiefs and just playoff wins. You got to specify year.
Which one? The Duke Christian Leitner? Which
No, I
one
said
are you
the Elite
talking?
Eight Notre Dame Kentucky game. What was it? You were
Oh.
undefeated that season, right?
Oh, that was the year Kentucky went undefeated and lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four. We were like,
I remember that. Yeah.
That was brutal Elite Eight game.
Yeah, that was our
That's the
best
best- that
probably
might
in
be
the
the
history of college basketball, in my opinion. I mean, that team was unstoppable. We had 10 players that are just elite, man.
We just hit so many threes in that game. Like, we were able to stay in it. And then
I think that was the John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins team. We had 2 NBA All-Pro players playing on the same team. It was insane.
Yeah. It's funny. And by the way, guys, whenever you need to go, please feel free to go. I don't want you to feel, if you don't want to stick around, just, feel free to go. But I enjoy your company, to say the least. Do you guys remember Christian Leitner's shot with about 1 second left?
one of my mom's best friends dated Christian Leitner.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened?
I mean, I don't know. She kind of hopped around the Duke team, though. Like, she went to Duke and she kind of, like, dated a lot of the players at some point. So
Why would you date somebody that is that tall?
I don't know.
It's very intimidating. I met one of my baseball team. There was a gentleman once who was 6'8". I just kept looking up at him, and I just thought he was so large. But hey, if it works for you, that's fine. Leitner, he took him to the national championship game. But I will never forget Jerry Tarkanian and UNLV. I mean, that was a team, and Duke beat them.
The terrible towel.
And let's not forget about Notre Dame baseball. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago when Notre Dame beat the number 1 seed in the tournament.
that was great. They beat Tennessee, yeah.
Uh-oh. Some people have frozen. Yes, the Notre Dame gentleman has frozen. He's back. All right, so guys,
Will
who
never
wins the
has
national
good
championship?
internet. He's
My-
that campus kid.
I'm a working man now, but
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. Isn't it? It's all downhill after college, isn't it?
I mean, it's at least some of my friends moved back in the area, so it's fun.
Don't become a lawyer. All you'll do is have people yell at you for your whole life. Then you go home and get yelled at. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
So my vote is Georgia. I think Georgia wins it all.
Mm-hmm.
I know what Spaz, you're going to say Oregon. And by the way, Spaz, you were great in Meatballs in 1976. Fantastic.
That's one of my favorite movies.
So, I'm assuming you think, I know, I love that movie. Poor little Rudy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, yeah. Duriel, and you went with Georgia?
Yes. Georgia, Texas. Part 3. Georgia wins.
No.
Sloppy, ugly, 10-7.
No, we don't want to see no damn Georgia, Texas Part 3.
Listen, Spaz.
Georgia is a beautiful state. Believe me, I work there. Very nice.
Hate the playoffs. I want these playoffs eliminated as soon as possible. So I want horrible outcomes in every game. And I think Georgia, Texas, 10-7. Actually, let's make it 5-2. How about that? 5-2 Georgia over Texas. Just a complete ugly football game.
Oh.
Quinn Ewers has like 3 picks in the game. I just want something horrendous, unwatchable. That way we get rid of the system as quickly as possible.
Duriel, Quinn Ewers can't throw the football anymore. Every time he releases it, there's no velocity on it. What's going on?
I know.
With
That's
him?
why I think Georgia anybody could get 3 picks. He's not that great of a quarterback. They should go to Manning, but because when he was in the game against Clemson, they looked more explosive. But
That's
I don't
true.
know why. I believe they're doing it to save it against an Oregon or Ohio State. That's the only reason I believe he's not in these games.
One option Texas could do, they could think outside the box. You know what I would do? Start the 3rd string QB that nobody knows. That'll cause immense controversy. He'll come in. If he throws 4 touchdown passes, it'll be like a love triangle between Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, and this mysterious 3rd QB. I think Texas's defense is what's going to take him pretty far. But something about Texas just doesn't – I don't know. Now, is there nobody here who is going to advocate for Boise State? Mac, of all people – I would think you must have been. You look like someone who's been to Idaho. You must love Boise. Are you not a fan of Boise State?
Listen, I had a professor once in a criminal justice class. He told me I was a wonderful advocate, but I don't think even I could advocate for that football program. Like I don't remember who said it earlier. They have no place in this playoff. They are not of the caliber of the other teams here. It is honestly a joke and a mockery of the entire football program. They shouldn't be here. They're not good enough. It's a fluke season for them.
You know,
They
back
took
in
the number one team in the country to a final play of the game field goal to lose at the number one team in the country in week 3. Just saying.
Spaz, did you watch any other Boise State games outside of that one? They almost lost to Wyoming. Rice.
Well, everybody has a bad week.
They had 3 bad weeks in a row.
Wyoming has a team.
Wyoming.
We barely beat Ohio State. We had a tough one in Wisconsin. We didn't exactly blow teams out like Indiana did all year.
Wisconsin is significantly better than Wyoming, Rice, and North Texas. You can actually combine all of those schools' best players, and I still think they lose to Wisconsin. That's the gap.
Madison.
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying anything can happen. Nobody gave Boise State a shot in the 2007 Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. I believe they were like 15-point underdogs in that game.
They didn't win that game. They did not win that game. Just like that crane kick in the first Karate Kid was illegal, that Statue of Liberty play was illegal. All right? Will, I was at the Notre Dame USC game back in 2015. But this year, I think this is the best Notre Dame team I've seen probably since maybe 2012. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say probably 2012. I mean, definitely better, more well coached than 2012, but
I just think this defense, and I think Marcus Freeman is a damn good coach. But Mac, you look pretty pissed off. So are you worried about Georgia's chances?
I mean, a little bit, yeah. You
tell that criminal justice professor to just watch what he says and to come visit New Jersey. Have you ever been to New Jersey?
I have not, but I will tell him to watch what he says. I hear he's up for tenure very soon, and he is on thin ice.
I hope they deny him.
I've been to Avalon. Avalon's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Avalon is nice. And anybody who's watching, spend some time in New Jersey, the northern part of New Jersey. And, when Spaz and the Oregon Ducks come, I'm going to take Spaz to Angelo's up in Bergen County. And the food's delicious. And as long as you're respectful, you will get out okay. Mm-hmm. So everything is going to be fine. So when you guys think of Boise State, is there a chance Boise State shocks the world?
I'm still not totally sold on Texas, but I'm not at all sold on Boise either. Madsen needs to play above his skill level for them to have a chance. I think it'll be closer than the SMU or Indiana. I think they'll play better than them, maybe. I think that at least get them to play as well as Clemson did against them.
I think the quarterback's name is Jennings for SMU. What was he doing throwing the ball to the other team?
Oh, man, he blew it.
I mean,
he was just. I think he thought he was on Penn State's team that year, that game last week.
I don't understand it. Those were horrible interceptions. He looked like Jalen Milroe.
All 3 of them, even the one in the end zone. It was like, what are you doing?
I don't know. It reminds me of that interception. No, it doesn't remind me of it, but I remember that interception that the quarterback for Ohio State threw against Clemson a few years ago.
Justin Fields,
thank you. And by the way, Notre Dame, beautiful, beautiful campus. I would recommend. I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for 4 years.
You should go to at least one Notre Dame game in your lifetime in South Bend.
I agree. Now, Arizona State.
I'd love to.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State, Mac, you would like Arizona State. It's a really great, a very interesting campus, great baseball program historically, but football program has always been mediocre. Dariel, do you think that Boise State or Arizona State has a chance to shock the world and go to the finals?
Nope.
I knew you were going to say that.
And why do you think so?
Lines of scrimmage?
Yeah, I agree with you. So I want to resolve this debate once and for all because I'm sick and tired of everyone bragging after the Ohio State game. What is the best conference in college football? Big Ten or
I think
SEC?
the top of the Big Ten is better than but the SEC's depth overall is much better than the Big Ten.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get tested. It's going to get tested in the next couple of weeks, or couple of years, I mean. I think the Big Ten has become much more competitive football than the SEC thought. And I think they hold a pretty good candle to the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
But these idiots that keep talking about the ACC being better than the Big Ten or SEC need to go have a drink at Angelo's.
Oh, we will. We'll have a drink at Angelo's. We'll have drinks at Angelo's. Yes, Chianti with linguine and white clam sauce, and you're going to meet a guy named Vinny.
My
I think
cousin Vinny.
Well, he's a little bit different. He's somebody who solves problems. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little later. But I think the Big 12 is the best conference in the country.
Oh, now we know you're drunk.
Here we go.
Adam, please tell me you're joking, right?
You don't think Utah should have been in the playoffs?
Let's expand it to 128 if you want to include Utah. That's how far we'd have to go to get Utah in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think the Big Ten is the worst conference in the country, and the idea that the conference champion gets an automatic bid, in my view, is ridiculous.
They need to just stop giving them the automatic bid spies. It should be like they should be in.
I mean, Adam did think that Florida should have been in.
Yes, I'm proud of that, Mac. As a SEC apologist and someone who who allegedly lives in Georgia, you said that I'm assuming you think the SEC is the best conference. Florida should have been in the playoff. Okay, my New York Giants in 2007 had 6 losses. They got in and they beat the Patriots, a 15-0 Patriots team, and stifled that silly quarterback Tom Brady. Wins and losses don't tell the whole story. Florida was one of the best 12 at the end of the season. Would you agree, Mac?
You know what? I got to stand by the Bulldogs. You know what? I think I would be something bad would happen to me. Something bad would happen. As it turns out, the link to this show got spread around some of my friends, and I can see them in the YouTube chat right now. A friend of mine, a reporter for the KSU Owls, great football team, by the way, over there, is actually...
What is KSU? Kentucky State University?
Kennesaw State University. I'm sorry, I forget. Not all people are from the great state of Georgia.
Yeah, they beat Liberty. Put some respect on their name.
Yeah, Kennesaw State has a wonderful football program, and the head reporter for their football program is in Birmingham right now, and he says he is drunk in Birmingham, and he said Greg Schiano.
Wait, is this friend of yours? You claim to have this friend. Is this Kai?
Yes, that would be Kai.
Kai who's making fun of Greg Schiano with that spelling. Kai, I'm appalled.
I told him he should come and voice his horrific views about Rutgers football on the show. I think he's got too many beers in him. But
well, what I'll say is this: one question I wanted to ask you guys is. So let's think about this. Georgia in the first half against Alabama was down 31-7. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Oregon almost lost to Wisconsin, or it was very close. Kentucky goes on the road to Ole Miss and beats them. So you have every single top team struggling in very bizarre games against inferior opponents. So, Duriel, how do you gauge, what makes these teams suffer such horrible losses, but at the same time be capable of such great victories? Is it the mindset of the players, the maturity? What do you think it is?
It's because people can get up for certain games and not others, and that's why this playoff is all usually blowouts. It's a lot easier to get up for Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia than it is to get up for Arizona State, Boise State, Kentucky, and those type of teams. It's also during the course of the regular season, you have to game plan 1 week at a time for every single game. Meanwhile, in the playoffs, Oregon's preparing for Ohio State for like a month now. Same with Georgia, probably pairing, I would guess, 85% of the time against Notre Dame and 15% of the time against Indiana. So that's what I would say to your point.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Spaz?
No, I agree with what Darrell was just saying. It's just easier to get up for those higher opponents than it is for the teams that, oh, well, here we're going to give you a pass to the playoffs. SMU, Boise State, Arizona State. Sure, we'd all love to see the Rudy happen at Arizona State or Boise State or SMU.
Sad. Rudy would have started for those teams. Man.
But I'm just saying, everybody would love to have that experience. That, wow, look what just happened. But we all know it's the reality of it is about 1%.
Hey, Spaz, when I first saw Rudy in the movie theaters, I saw it with my ex-girlfriend. And in the last scene, I got tears in my eyes, and she said I was pathetic.
That's
You
funny.
believe that? You believe that? Unbelievable. Well,
Yeah.
I think the reason Rutgers lost tonight was because the refs screwed them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding. What I want to say is that the refs in the SEC have been terrible this year. Like, what is going on with? I mean, Mac, come on. You saw in the Alabama game that ridiculous call against Oklahoma. I mean, what do you think that there is bias among some of these referees?
I think there definitely is. There's been talks, many games about SEC schools playing other schools, and the refs being SEC refs, and the games getting called for the SEC teams. I'm not going to say that doesn't go on, but I think referees are often a scapegoat for people with pathetic teams to talk about why they lost instead of addressing the root issue, which is their horrendous coaching and piss poor player stocks.
That's a good point. Do you think that Gunnar Stockton is good enough to balance that offense, or are they going to rely on Frazier and Etienne?
I don't know. There were good things, like in the Tech game, he was okay. He might be able to pull it together. He might not. I don't know. Once again, this Georgia team is a coin flip on every snap. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
If they're healthier, they're going to be good. And since you're here, Will, a Notre Dame fan, since we have a Notre Dame fan here, I've always wanted to ask a question. And this is by the way, I see in the comment box, damn, life is not very kind to you, Adam. That is very true, as a matter of fact. But we persevere. So, Will, one of the issues I've had with Notre Dame is that when they recruit football players, they maintain their academic standards for football players or something close to it.
They calmed it a bit, but the standards are higher.
Yeah. Do you think that's a problem? Like, I wouldn't, because Notre Dame is an outstanding, it's an elite university, but why not just relax the academic standards for the ball players? Is there some principle involved that is it a philosophical thing?
I mean, it's the Board of Regents that they want to keep the standard high they want the university to look good and all that. But I do think it's a bit of a strength because players, like, they do want that Notre Dame degree, so they're more willing to wait a few years to start than they would be at other schools because a lot of guys
Manti Te'o in there.
Want to start.
Manti Te'o. Wasn't he the one who? Well, anyway, I mean,
But not many players will transfer out of Notre Dame until their junior year if they won't start because they want to get that degree. So player development it does help player development at Notre Dame.
Yeah, he's Notre Dame. Yeah, it's a wonderful degree. There was a tight end from Fort Wayne who went to Notre Dame several years ago. Very good tight. I forget his name, but he was very, very talented. And Tyler Buckner is back at Notre Dame. Is he on the football team or on lacrosse?
He's on the roster for the football team. He doesn't play. He barely plays. Like he was on in a fake punt against USC. They had him as the thrower in a fake punt against USC. That's the only time he's touched the field, though.
I think he got a raw deal at Alabama. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought he was more talented than people thought. But, well, and here we are left with Rutgers. I mean, Mac, you're lucky because you get to be a fan of Georgia, who's been who's been an elite team. But how do you go about making a mediocre team elite?
Eifert was from Fort Wayne. I was looking it up. Tyler Eifert.
That's it. Eifert. That's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lived in Fort Wayne for 4 years, taught at a law school there. Then the university shut down the law school suddenly. And that took me.
Thanks for having me on.
Spaz, I love you, man. Thanks for being on.
I will holler at you guys later. I'm going to go make some dinner.
Absolutely. Pasta.
Yeah. Spaghetti and meatballs. Great
seeing you.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Yeah, so I guess I guess we can wrap this segment up with one question I have for the two of you, which is, where do you see the future of college football going, given NIL and the portal and the cast that's been created?
I think there's going to be a commissioner of college football eventually. I feel like we have to get there because, the Wild West, this just isn't sustainable. This isn't healthy for the athletes, isn't healthy for the coaches, and isn't healthy for the university. So I feel like at some point there will be a leader of college football that will be able to, whether it's the NCAA, which I doubt. I mean, the NCAA has been horrible, but I think some other entity will eventually take over college football and will be able to make life better for all parties.
I have the perfect idea for who should be the commissioner of college football. Mitt Romney. He ran the Olympics. What do you think, Mac?
I think this whole NIL thing is a big slippery slope. It starts, players want to make money off of their likeness. That's, I guess that's understandable. If Adidas wants to put their face on someone's ass for underwear or something, go ahead. But where it's gone with players, essentially making money to play football like they were professionals, I think it's too far. I think it's created, like Will said, an unhealthy atmosphere for everybody else. And he's right. It's not sustainable. It's going to become an environment where large schools with big endowments, like schools like Alabama or Georgia, are able to just buy up players and have dynasties that run forever. And, if people like that in the NFL, they can go with that, but that's not how college football is supposed to be.
I agree with you. I think that's a good point. And I see Troy said it was supposed to be name, image, and likeness. Now it's straight up paying. Absolutely. And by the way, why don't these students who have 1500s on the SAT and a 4.0 demand to get paid for keeping the school's rankings up? I mean, why do we stop there? Why don't high school players start demanding to get paid? I don't know. I just think that ultimately Congress might step in to regulate this because it's. And I see we have another caller here, but I'm not going to bring this caller on because he said that I have weak shoulders, even though he liked my hair, so he's eliminated. Just kidding. The Bull will win. Welcome to the show.
Oh, what's going on, man? Hair looking great, dude. At some point, Adam, you have to change the profile picture, bro, on the Twitter, bro.
It's not easy being pretty.
You gotta change it. You look like you're still 18 on your Twitter.
Listen to me. In 16 years, I'll be getting Social Security. Do you believe this? That's funny.
AARP card, huh?
Do you know I take naps now?
I wish I could take a nap, bro. I got a kid that be running around, man. That's all I'm
I
gonna know.
teach and then I'm exhausted and I take naps. This is ridiculous.
Where do you teach, Adam?
Where do I teach? I teach in Georgia, in Milledgeville, Georgia, at a school called Georgia College and State University. And I'm lucky because I have really talented students, which makes teaching so much more fun. But they don't have a football team.
Mm.
Yeah, I hear their board really wants to keep the academic integrity of the school. They really want to focus on being a liberal arts institution, and football would detract from that. So,
Hey, I don't know what to say about that except if you the sole goal of education should be get students to critically think and to keep your ideology to yourself and teach students how to think but not what to think. That's why I tell my students, I don't care if you're liberal or conservative, whatever. All views are welcome. I'm a mushy moderate, so no one likes me. So what are your thoughts on college football? The bull will win. I love that. I love that name. I should use that. I should copy that. People will get confused.
Dude,
You won't
you
know
can't
who we
remember
are.
it, bro. That's my Xbox gamer tag from like 2002. I've been keeping it, but I put on everything. But no, I mean, to comment on that, honestly, I got a lot of thoughts on that. I think eventually, right? I think we're gonna have contracts, and I think I would assume a year or two, because as you can see, I mean, just athletic programs are just going constantly into the dust. I mean, just look at, I think today, the Miami basketball coach. He says, "I'm done. I'm retiring." Like,
Really?
like he's just said, "I'm done. I'm done coaching. I'm retired." And he was the guy who led George Mason to all those runs in the tournament. And so Miami picked him up, and he just blatantly said in a statement to On3 saying, "My players are leaving. My players are leaving, and I don't know why. I asked them, and they actually tell me like, hey, I need to see what my market value is." This is what like
I would.
they made it to the tournament last year. I don't know if you know. I think they made it to the Final Four last year. So like, what are we doing?
In 23, they did. Yeah.
I think that's why Saban left.
Yeah,
I really do.
I mean, he's the same age as Saban, so it makes sense that.
yeah. We're lucky here in Michigan where we have Dusty May, who's just all about it, adopting to the times, raising money before he even tries to go into the portal to get players and recruit a roster and everything. So I applaud him for that. But that doesn't solve, that's just someone adapting with the times. It doesn't solve the long term problem of you have to constantly recruit your players, and then you have. I mean, it's different for us. I feel like, because I feel like some of ours is just some backups that are okay. Someone did do like not a statistic, but an analysis of a roster over the last 3 years of who left for the portal, and I think only 3 players out of like 12 panned out,
Yeah.
and other teams. So it's portal sounds great, but just like you, just trying to recruit your roster, trying to have the money, trying to have the retention, it's not gonna last. You're constantly digging into some uncapped well, like it's gonna go
Totally
dry
agree.
at some point.
Yeah, it must be miserable being a college football coach. I got to tell you. I mean, I actually, I called into Nick Saban used to do a show for Alabama football every week. I called in once and I asked him. I said, "How do you, given the hours you work and the pressure you're under, you still have a successful life and marriage?" I said, "How do you do it?" And he was like, "Well, I have a standard for how I want to act, and I have to meet that standard. And I don't really care about what anybody else thinks." But you could tell during the last year or two that he was tired, and I felt like he thought college football was changing and was inconsistent with the values he was trying to teach these kids. And I think that's an issue. And we have another guest. And this guest is the one who was hurling insults at Greg Schiano and Rutgers. So I had planned to start the next segment in about 5 minutes, but we're going to bring on Kai because Kai has something to say. Kai, you look like you're at a bar.
Hello, Kai.
Hey, go Owls. Hey, we got some Rutgers fans here, right?
We do. One.
So, Ace Bailey's homecoming. Let's talk about it.
Who's homecoming?
Ace Bailey?
What would you like to say about it?
Is that not y'all's boy?
No, our boy is Kyle Monongai, and he's not playing tonight.
I'm
Yes.
talking basketball. I'm talking hoops.
All right, here's what I'll say about basketball. I love the movie Hoosiers. That's about as much as I like about basketball. That's it. So Rutgers, I know Rutgers basketball is good, but I am not familiar with the basketball team. But you seem to be, so you're a Rutgers basketball fan. Welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you guys. I am the Kennesaw State media. I am the only one. Mac tells me that my feed is very loud on this stream. I appreciate y'all having me here. But we beat you guys in basketball. I was telling my buddy here, it is very hard to hate Rutgers as a program because you guys haven't been good in forever. So I root for y'all all the time.
You sound like a Michigan State fan.
Baby. Back in middle school, I had a big-time crush on this girl named Scarlet. So I have a huge soft spot for the Scarlet Knights.
All right, well, that's interesting. You seem like an interesting personality, and we're glad you came on the show. But the Bull will win. I think his hair is not nearly as good as mine. I mean, you have to acknowledge that.
Mac, you be the judge.
I think he's got you beat there, Kai.
What?
It's the
Will.
waves. It's the waves. Yours is it's a little flat. It's a little flat, man.
I've been wearing a beanie, man.
You need the product. You need the product to flow.
All right, we're gonna have another show with a segment on personal life characteristics and issues. But I first want to know, Will, what's the score prediction for Georgia Notre Dame?
I'll go
Notre Dame, Irish all the way.
I'll go 2017 Irish.
Good prediction. The Bill will win. What do you think?
Probably 21-10. We'll do Irish.
Wow, 2 Irish fans. So it's up to you, Mac and Kai. Mac, since you're a Georgia fan.
Golly, it's hard to predict, but I'm going to say 28-3.
Georgia?
Yes, of course.
Falcons love that score.
I hate that you bring that up. My dirty birds, my beloved,
I knew you were probably a
Falcons.
Falcons fan, so I had to put that. Yeah.
Ironically, during that game, my wife is a huge Tom Brady fan. Now, she's an okay Michigan fan. I'm a huge Michigan fan, not a Tom Brady fan. It was weird. But I fell asleep during that. And I was like, honey, I got to go to work. This game's over with. She wakes me up at like 10, 11 o'clock. I'm like trying to get over my drunken haze. And she's like, we won. We won.
I was so mad, man. I was pulling for the Falcons in that game.
I don't know. Watch out for the Irish this playoffs. They could do something. They're a dangerous team. But
well, I got a question for Mac. How do you feel about your quarterback there? How do you is that backup good? I mean, he has some moxie to him, but do you feel like it's like a Stetson Bennett type of thing or what?
Yeah, this is something we talked about earlier. I thought he did fine in the Georgia Tech game when chronically ill Carson was out. But it's so hard to tell. It's so hard to tell because this is an offense that requires a really big leader in front of it, and I don't know if he can pull that together. So if he can, I think they're going to absolutely steamroll. But if he can't, I think they might get steamrolled.
I see. Yeah. I feel a bit the same. I feel like I saw some moxie, I saw some athleticism, but that only gets you so far, right? That just means like, are you seeing the field, right? Or is it like you're looking at one read and you're just running? It's like you said, it it sounds great, that you may be an athlete and some moxie, but it's a different thing. Like for us at Michigan, where it's like, hey man, I need you to run the offense. I need you to look at some reads. I need you to be a quarterback out here, and not just, fly off with the seat of your pants and make something happen. We have to triculate the ball a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, on that note, Adam, it's been wonderful. Thank you for having me. I am gonna go pour myself another glass of bourbon, but
Wait,
have
hold
fun.
on. What kind of bourbon is it?
I don't
Bullet?
know. No, not
Woodford
Bullet.
Reserve?
Not Bullet. Not
Well, before you
Woodford.
go,
I think we've got some Evan Williams downstairs.
Before you
So-
go, I am predicting that Notre Dame will defeat Georgia 3-2. Georgia with a late safety to pull within a point, but doesn't get it done. No, I think Georgia is probably going to win, and I say this with very modest confidence. I think Georgia is going to win 27-21, but I think it's going to be, it could go the other way. And with that, guys, I will, in fact, end this segment because I'm going to get to the Rutgers game and discuss the stats from the Rutgers game before we end the show. But I appreciate you all being here, and thank you for your great comments. Great to see you as always, and happy holidays.
Yeah, Adam.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Merry
guys.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Okay, so thanks so much for everybody calling in. Great comments and great discussion. Please call in again. We're going to be broadcasting every Monday at 7 p.m. In the next several weeks, we're going to be discussing the players, recruiting, and all issues involving Rutgers football. But before we end tonight, we've got to discuss this very, very devastating 44-41 loss to Kansas State. Let's look at the team statistics of this game. Rutgers, 400 total yards. Kansas State, 539. Passing yards, 236 for Rutgers, 195 for Kansas State. Rushing yards, 164 for Rutgers. Now get this, 344 for Kansas State. Now this was a Rutgers defense that was ranked in the top 30 in rushing defense midway through the year. Gave up 344 yards on the ground. Yards per play, 5.9 for Rutgers, 7.8 for the Jayhawks. First downs, Rutgers 18, Kansas State 24. Third down efficiency, 50% for each, 7 of 14. For Rutgers, 8 of 16 for Kansas State. Fourth down efficiency, Rutgers 0 for 1, that being in the late fourth quarter. Kansas State 1 for 1. Total plays, 68 and 70, respectively. Each team had one turnover, and the time of possession was nearly identical, 29 minutes for Rutgers, 29 minutes and 19 seconds for Kansas State. Now, player statistics for Rutgers. Ethan Kaliakmanis, not a great night, 14 of 32 for 236 yards with a touchdown and an INT. Antoine Raymond, former Don Bosco prep star, 18 carries for 113 yards for 6.3 average and 3 touchdowns. Great night for Raymond. Jashawn Benjamin, 7 carries, 33 yards for 4.7 yards per carry average and 1 touchdown. On the receiving end, Ian Strong, 5 receptions for 104 yards, and KJ Duff, 3 receptions for 58 yards. Let's turn to Kansas State. Avery Johnson, 15 of 30 for 195 yards, an interception, but 3 big touchdowns. Running back for Kansas State, very good night for him. Dylan Edwards, 18 carries, 196 yards for 10.9 yards per carry average and 2 touchdowns. And on the receiving end, Jace Brown, 5 receptions for 60 yards. Joe Jackson, 3 receptions for 37 yards. So this was a very, very difficult loss for a Rutgers team that had certainly an up and down season. They began 4-0. Then suffered a losing streak, losing to Nebraska in Lincoln 14-7, losing 42-10 in Piscataway against the Wisconsin Badgers, losing 35-32 against the Bruins of UCLA in Piscataway, and then going to Los Angeles and losing 42-20 against the USC Trojans. So 4 wins followed by 4 losses. Rutgers came back with a victory over Maryland. They came back with a victory over Minnesota and a victory over Michigan State, but suffered a heartbreaking last-second loss to Illinois to finish the season 7-5. So this was a big game for Rutgers because you really want to see, is Rutgers moving, is the trajectory upward, or is Rutgers going to be more of the same that it has been historically? And tonight, unfortunately, the latter was true. Rutgers jumping out to a 34-17 lead, but imploding in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter, where their defense really collapsed. And, before the game, Coach Greg Schiano, during his press conference, really emphasized, a lot of different things. Number one, that Rutgers has suffered a historic amount of injuries. In his 37-year career, he said he's never had as many injuries as he had on this team. Mohamed Toure, linebacker, out for the season. Brian Felter, offensive lineman, out for the season. Samuel Brown, running back. Victor Konopka, tight end. Wesley Bailey, defensive end. Tyler Needham, right tackle. And Abram Wright, linebacker. All right, we're talking that's 7 people, 7 players that had significant playing time out with injuries. And I'm not talking missing time. I'm saying missing the whole season. Devastating for a program that doesn't have a great amount of depth and that really depended on those players and what it hoped would be a more successful season. They also had players that missed significant amounts of time. Chris Long at wide receiver, Eric Rogers, defensive back, Shedrick Rhodes, offensive line, and Kyle Monangai missed a game after getting injured against USC. So, as Schiano pointed out in the press conference, he's proud of the team for persevering through these, through really an unprecedented amount of injuries. But as with anything else in life, you can't blame the injuries. You have to persevere and you have to play hard. They did that tonight, but ultimately, I think the injuries caught up with them. And I believe that the defense essentially collapsed because a lot of those injuries were on the defensive side. So when we look at the season, we see Rutgers at 7-6. How would you say the season went? I would say that it was not what we'd hoped it would be. And we will look back and think of what could have been for 2 reasons. First, this team had a lot of talent. And second, the team had a favorable schedule. A schedule that will not likely be replicated anytime soon. Next year, they'll go to Ohio State. They'll be home against Oregon. Okay, they'll play Penn State. They're going to go at Washington. So what does this mean for Rutgers football? What does this loss signify? I think what it shows is that Rutgers is at a crossroads. It's going to go one of 2 directions. It's either going to sink back into mediocrity, or it's going to be the kind of competitive team that it was under Greg Schiano in his first stint from 2001 to 2011. Which direction it goes and whether they are successful is going to depend on a lot of things. But most importantly, it's going to depend on, number one, can they get some 4 and 5 stars to come to Piscataway and play for the Scarlet Knights? I think they need to devote the resources to getting players and buying players out of high school. Number 2, are they going to get into the transfer portal? And are they going to get some 4 and 5 stars who are sitting on the bench at Alabama or Ohio State or Georgia or Texas and get them to come to Rutgers and be able to pay them money? Number 3, are they going to develop players so that they can boast that Rutgers players are consistently getting drafted and having successful careers in the NFL? Those 3 things are critical, but it's a tall order for a program that really has not attracted those types of athletes and has depended on development consistently. But if Rutgers commits the resources through NIL, through the portal, and has the types of coaches who will develop players and lead them to successful careers in the NFL, that is going to be the beginning of attracting the types of 4-star and 5-star athletes they need. And when a couple come, guess what? More will come. And when you start winning more games, you will see it's a domino effect. But Rutgers is not there yet. And tonight showed that Rutgers is kind of stuck in an era of mediocrity. And it can't really get over that hump at this point, especially with the injuries. But the injuries are not really the excuse. Rutgers just doesn't have the talent at this point to compete on an elite level in the Big Ten. And until they do those things, whether it's through the portal, NIL, developing players, I think we're going to see more of the same. But there is always hope, and we hope to have Coach Greg Schiano on this show to talk about the future of Rutgers and the potential for the team next year and the years going forward. We have another caller here, Austin Williams. Austin, thanks so much for coming on the show. How's it going?
Pretty good. I was hoping Adam could come on a better circumstances for you guys. I was hoping Rutgers would pull one out for you, because I know you told me you thought maybe you were the jinx. They almost had it.
They almost had it, yeah. Well, I was the jinx for a while because I started this show when they were 4-0. Then they lost 4 straight. And thank God they rebounded a bit and won 3 of their last 4. And ironically, Kansas State had lost 3 of their last 4. But what I saw tonight was that Kansas State was just more talented. And when they settled down, Rutgers had no answer.
Hey, and I want to bring this point up because I think it's an interesting point. This was a shootout of a game, and honestly, if you would have told me that Kansas State would have scored 44 points, I would have said Rutgers has got no shot. This is going to get ugly. But the fact that Rutgers hung with them, and the fact that it was only a 3-point win for Kansas State, I have very high hopes a little bit now for Rutgers, knowing that they can win these type games, because you always get the mindset, especially in the Big Ten, Rutgers is going to win those 21-14 type ugly games. Do you see, Adam, as a Rutgers fan, even without your best player going forward, do you think Rutgers can maybe put more of these 30, 40-point games together?
That's a great question. And I think that the answer is yes, because Ethan Kaliakmanis is coming back. A lot of their starters are returning on the offensive side, not as many on the defensive side. But I think you make a great point. They were competitive against teams, even last year, that you wouldn't normally think Rutgers would be competitive against. For example, in the bowl game last year, they beat Miami. They were very close with Illinois. They were very close with, admittedly, a mediocre Nebraska team. But against teams that traditionally have blown them out, they've been competitive. Where I think they are right now is kind of like a step below Iowa, where I think they have the potential to break through, but I think they need more depth. And it always comes down to you got to win those close games. And so I guess my answer would be I think that they are going to improve, but I think it's going to take a few more years.
Well, and you make a great point how Rutgers, still has trouble closing and winning these close games. There was a few games this year where, even though the Washington game, first one that comes to mind, where they had to hang on and win that game. That game became closer than it needed to be, but Rutgers was able to close it out. But you look at the game, like later on down the line, Rutgers reverted back to old Rutgers. And I know as like a non-Rutgers fan, you see that and think, oh, it's just good old Rutgers. But like you've been saying, Adam, that this is just what Rutgers does. And I don't know if it'll ever change. I hope it does for your sake. But like you said, especially like this year with the schedule that they got dealt, kind of like Indiana. Rutgers could easily have gone 9-3, 10-2. I don't think I'm crazy for saying that. They got dealt a pretty good schedule.
You're right.
They just got the injury bug hit them later on in the year, and then they just were Rutgers again.
Yeah, you make a great point. I think it was a favorable schedule this year, and it was a Rutgers team that was more talented than it has been in recent years. The injuries certainly played a role, but I also think, a lot of times whether a season goes, in one direction or another depends on often a few plays or, a few mistakes. Against Nebraska, they have the ball first and goal at the 2-yard line, and they can't get the ball in the end zone. It was things like that just got Rutgers. Against Illinois, they have the lead with about 22 seconds left. It's a 4th down at midfield, and Illinois' quarterback, I forgot what his name was, but throws a touchdown pass. And that's two games right there that if they had won, they'd be 9-3. And I think that Rutgers needs to be able to win those battles, those difficult battles, like on a 1st and goal against Nebraska from the 2. They have to get the ball in. Against Illinois, they have to make that stop. And it's like you kind of feel with Rutgers that they're so close, but yet so far away, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and I feel like that, and with because I've watched a couple of Rutgers games this year.
Right.
Y'all have got some talent, and Callie McManus, I've watched him throughout the games this year. He's not a bad quarterback in my opinion, Adam. I know Rutgers fans, that some are 50-50 on him, some think he's good, some I don't think he's bad. He's just when he's got time in the pocket. He's like any other quarterback. He's on time and on target. It's those off-script plays that worry me about him. Like tonight, Kansas State dialed up a lot of blitzes, and you've seen how he kind of was like, in the first half, he was just throwing the dimes, looking good, and then they brought those cover zeros, and they brought the spies around to him, and it just kind of threw him off a little bit.
Yeah.
And for you, Adam, do you notice that when you watch Kaliak McManus? Is it like, man, if he would just not be so timid and not be so with the blitzes and stuff that these coaches throw at him, we might have something here? Because I don't think he's a bad quarterback. You may disagree with me.
I agree with you. I think, again, you make really great points. I think the issue with Callie McManus is, like you said, when he has time, he is very accurate. He has a great arm. But when he gets pressured or when the pocket breaks down, that's when he's very inconsistent. And I think that Callie McManus' performance is almost like a microcosm of the entire team over the year, that there were times when they were doing well, but there were times when they reverted back to form. And I think with Callie McManus, he needs a little more development, but the potential is certainly there. I would give him a grade of a B on the year.
A B.
I think, yeah. So I wouldn't say I don't support him, but what I would say is those intangible qualities are what Rutgers needs to really have. Like when it comes down to a 4th and 1 at the 2-yard line, you got to make it. When you're under pressure and the play breaks down, Callie McManus, you got to hit that 3rd down, and he did that to an extent tonight. But again, there was that inconsistency. And I think it goes back to culture. Like when you talk about reverting back to Rutgers, like the Rutgers historically, you got to have a coaching staff that changes the culture and that does not accept that, and that pushes these players to hold themselves to a higher standard. Now, how do you do that? I mean, that's difficult. But I do think that the culture at Rutgers, I think if it was more like a Nick Saban type culture at Alabama, you can effectuate consistency by helping players to improve their mindsets and the intangibles that win those close battles, like against Nebraska or on that 4th down against Illinois. I just don't think they're there yet, but I do think they can get there. So I would agree most with your general point.
And I'll say this too, Adam. I don't think he's the reason y'all lost this game tonight. I truly don't. I think he played one of his better games. I think the defense let you down. And, as we have to take it with a grain of salt because, all these teams are dealing with opt-outs, injuries. So I won't judge like too harsh. Don't matter what team you are, every team's dealing with opt-outs. But Avery Johnson, in that running game, if Rutgers doesn't, it's very concerning for me, Adam. Watching that, and I get, like I said, the opt-outs. This was a chance for your young guys to show you, hey, our front line was really good, but now the young guys, with all these opt-outs and stuff and these opportunities that they've been given, the run defense absolutely crapped the bed tonight. Dylan Edwards, Avery Johnson, they were the reason Kansas State got back in this game.
Yeah, you're totally right. I agree with you 100%. This game is not on Cali Kamanis. And you would think that when there are opt-outs, the younger players, who I'm sure want to play all year, would look at this as an opportunity to show themselves as worthy of earning a starting position. What lost this game, particularly in the second half, the defense couldn't stop them, but it was so glaringly bad in how open, especially the running backs were. And you have to wonder, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the fourth down against Nebraska and against Illinois. Rutgers needed one stop tonight to win this game. When they needed it, they didn't. And you would think the players would play with a sense of urgency that I didn't see there in the second half. I saw more of a collapse. And that's why I say they're going back to the Rutgers of old, because the Rutgers of old always seemed to have that mindset where when things got difficult, they couldn't get over the hump. And that's what I saw tonight, and that's what's discouraging.
Yes. And there's the good and bad to the situation. It's good that your offense is putting up these points and that that Kaliak McManus can do this. But it's also bad to know, oh, Lord, we're giving up 40, 44 points in case of tonight, and we can't stop the run.
Yeah.
And that's just one of them. It's just like a head scratcher. And I've noticed that with Rutgers too, that's been their Achilles heel all year. Even when y'all were healthy, there were stretches where y'all couldn't stop the run, in my opinion. Like Washington, like in that Washington game, that's what, you were able to stop them, but like against these teams that could run the ball a little better, it showed up. Injuries or not, I feel like that maybe they need to beef up more on the D-line, or Schiano needs to do a little something different there, because that seems like that may cost them a lot more than what it did tonight if they don't get that problem fixed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to beef up on the D-line. And I think that, when I look at this game tonight, you're right. You really can't blame the injuries, because there were times when they were relatively healthy that they still couldn't stop the run. What bothered me about tonight was that they held Kansas State to 17 points until about midway through the third quarter, and then everything collapsed. So it showed me they have the potential to do it, but then everything went sideways on them. Now, maybe you could say that Kansas State made adjustments, but they should make adjustments too. And it's like a tale of two halves, and this season is like a tale of two teams. And that's what Rutgers has been for a large part of its history, even worse than that, until they solve that and get more consistent. I think the answer is the culture needs to change. We need to get better players, and you need to win kind of like you need to win those inches, those very critical downs during a game that really determine the outcome. I don't think Rutgers has done that. And with the schedule next year, if they don't make those improvements, we're going to be looking at a season that could go sideways.
And you bring up some great points, Adam, that I want to touch on. Kind of going, now into the off season. For you as a Rutgers fan, what's one thing you want to see Greg Schiano address in recruiting or the portal? Like from what you saw throughout the year and tonight, what's one thing you're like, we need to hit on this, or else it could be really bad? What's the one key thing?
The one key thing for me is I want Schiano to get great players who are physical and that can dominate in the trenches, because that's where I think Rutgers falls short. The second thing I want to see is a culture change. I want Schiano to change the expectations of Rutgers. I don't like hearing we're so proud to go to a bowl game. That's not the standard at schools like Ohio State or Oregon.
Nope.
I want them to change the culture, but I want them to get players who are physical at the line of scrimmage. And that's where I think they need to improve the most.
Well, and we talked about this last time I called in, but Rutgers has always been kind of that Big Ten team that every now and then they'll get a top 20 win. And and Greg Schiano will get the talk of the town that week. Oh, look at Rutgers. They beat a top 25 Iowa team or Minnesota, or throw one out there. And Rutgers will be like, oh, yeah. And then they'll lose it the next game. And then it's like, oh, well, it's Rutgers.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to me, that goes back to the culture, because there is no excuse for that. And Rutgers has always been one of those teams where when you play them, you have to play well to beat them, but they don't really scare a lot of people. I mean, they have the potential to defeat a good team, but typically what happens is they'll win and surprise people, but then revert back to form and lose to a team that they should be. And I think the only answer to that is, yes, you need players in the trenches who are going to be physical and dominate the line of scrimmage, but there's a culture problem, I think. And sometimes when I see Coach Schiano talk, I wonder if the culture at Rutgers is a culture that says we want to win a national championship and the standard is extremely high. I don't know if that culture is existing at Rutgers, and I think that is a problem.
And it feels like to me, Adam, that Rutgers goes 8-4, you all are ready to hang a banner for that.
Right.
And I understand that. If you're, I can understand if like you're Vanderbilt or in Indiana, like I know there's jokes going around that Indiana's going to hang a banner for going 11-2, all that, ha ha ha. But like Rutgers, like they go 8-4, they're like, woohoo, let's party, and it's like, no, Rutgers, like you could be better than that. We know you can. Indiana, Vanderbilt, we haven't seen enough.
Yeah.
Because Rutgers used to be. And Rutgers, back in the day, Adam, were really, really good.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because, if they went 8-4, the university, I'm sure, and the fans would have been like, this is a great year. If you go 8-4 at Alabama, the fans are going to think the coach should be fired, and they're going to, they will never accept that. So why is the culture such that we would accept 8-4 or even 9-3? I think it's because fans have gotten so used to Rutgers being a bad team that they think, oh, this is such a great improvement. But they shouldn't look at it as kind of like the end in and of itself. They should say 8-4 is good, but there's more work to be done to be successful. And I want to hear Coach Schiano say that. And I don't hear him saying that. And that's what I think is a problem. I don't want to sit there and say, we're so happy to be in a bowl game and be at the Rate Bowl. No, what I want to hear is, we're happy to be here, but this is the beginning of the journey, not the end, because our goal is to win a national championship. And that's the problem, I think, with the culture at Rutgers. They don't do that.
And it's one of them things, too, Adam. It's something that is going to go, takes time to accomplish. Like in anything, you have to be patient. Yeah. Like Indiana, they're a great example of that. Everyone thinks, oh, this is going to be the standard now with Cignetti. And it's going to be a rude awakening next year when they go 8-4, 9-3, which will still be great for their standards. Right. But when they don't make the playoffs every year, they're going to start, they're weeping again. But for Rutgers, I agree with you. Do we expect Rutgers to win the Big Ten every year? No. But it would be nice to see them there in the title game.
Yes. And it would be nice to see that even if it's going to take 10 years to be successful, that each year we're making improvements and progressing towards that goal. What I saw this year was like taking one step forward and then taking two steps back. And that has historically been the case with Rutgers. So I'm in for the long haul, but we need to see improvement each year, and we need to see the coaches upholding a standard that is like the standards at Alabama or any of the top teams. It's not just Alabama, and I want to hear that from the coaches because I want the players to have that mindset that it is not acceptable to be 7-5. And certainly, and that's what I think has to change.
Yes, and I'm with you, Adam. The culture is the biggest key to everything.
Yes.
Thing, in my opinion. And look at some of the best programs in history. It always starts with the culture. People think, oh, it's because of the 5 stars. It's because of this, that. It's the culture. That's how you build things. You build it, they will come, as they say. And if Greg Schiano would establish a culture that 8-4, 7-5 is not good enough, we need to be going 9-3, 10-2, and establishing that we're going to be contenders in the Big Ten instead of being 7-5, like you said, and celebrating like they won the Super Bowl. It starts with the culture. I agree with you on that, Adam. And that's one of the biggest things to me.
You are
about building a program.
You are 100%.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. You're 100% right. And that's a great comment because it's not acceptable for me. It shouldn't be acceptable for the players. You have teams that are littered with 4- and 5-star players who don't perform well because they're in a culture that does not have the standard to say, okay, it is not acceptable to lose. It is not acceptable to have 2 losses or 3 losses. And the players push themselves because of the coaches to be the best they can be. And I don't see that at Rutgers. What I see is we're happy we have a winning record. And that is a cancer that will ensure that the program remains mediocre rather than being a program that 4- and 5 stars say, hey, maybe I want to go to Rutgers because their mission and their values are to be the best. Until they do that, I think next year we're going to see more of the same, if not worse.
And the thing, too, is, Adam, about the culture, is it just me or does Greg Schiano not have that fire that most coaches have on that sideline? He seems like always calm in demeanor. Like we always see those coaches that even though that they're calm in demeanor, but they do have their moments where they're like, they go after the refs or they stick up for their players. Schiano seems like that guy that's always like, oh, well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Schiano and what he's been able to do at Rutgers in both of his stints there. But I sometimes get the sense that he's more of like a teacher than a coach in that he mentors the players and he encourages the players and he supports the players, but he doesn't, chew their ass out when they do something wrong. He doesn't go after them like a Nick Saban would, or a Brian Kelly would, and you can name any coach at an elite pro, and that I think is part of the culture problem. And I want to hear him say in a press conference, for example, when they beat Minnesota or when they beat Washington, I want to see him get up in the press conference and say, yeah, we won this game, but we sure as hell didn't play well. And we need to improve if we're going to beat the best teams, or else we're not going to be contending for any title, much less the Big Ten title, and drill that into their players, because when you do that, you're not just making them better football players. You're making them better prepared for life. And that's the one thing about Schiano. He does seem a bit more, a bit too player friendly.
Yes. And that's the thing, too. Like, one of the best things about being coaches is because my dad, he was a coach, and he always loved, at the high school level, he loved coaching the kids. Yeah. That was one of his favorite things. He liked being the teacher. He liked telling them like life lessons. Like players would come up and ask him like for life advice. That's like cool. But when it's time to be coach, it's time to be coach. Like you said, Shiano, even though every team has a bad day, but like Rutgers, it seems like it's very consistent. They win, and Shiano's like it's a very good win, yada yada yada, and he doesn't seem to come out with that fire and energy like, hey, we had a bad day last week, but we ended up winning. Let's not put ourselves in a situation where we have to go down and kick a game-winning field goal after being up 21 or making those silly mistakes. Let's fix it and let's get it right. We've got this team coming to town.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And it's funny because it reminds me like of a game when Alabama was ahead like 62-10 over New Mexico State. And Saban's going off on one of his players for whatever he did on defense or whatever missed assignment he had. That's the kind of culture that you want to kind of foster. I don't want to hear positives all the time. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I can tell you, you can't be you can't be their friends. Because if you have to risk not being liked, because the goal is to develop these people into great football players and to be great citizens when they no longer play football. I don't see Shiano doing that, and I hate to say that because I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And if he comes on the show, I'm going to ask him about that. Like, what is the culture that you are developing? Is it a championship culture, or is it a culture where we're okay being good? And I think that's what Rutgers is about. They're okay being good, and that's not going to get them anywhere.
And that's another great point you just made, Adam. Sometimes it's good for the players and even as human beings to hear when you've done something wrong or you've messed up. And I know in the world today where we're in NIL and everything, people could just flake out and leave. But the good coaches, the players that are committed to the University of Rutgers, if Shiano gets on them and he's thinking, oh, they're just going to walk out and leave, then let them do that. They weren't meant to be here with you all. And I think that's a lot of the old school coaches. And I think maybe that might be what is holding Shiano back a little bit, in my opinion, is the NIL part of it, where players could just get up and leave. And it's like, if they want to do that, go for it. They weren't meant to be here to begin with.
Yeah, that's a great point because, these players these days, they have to understand. You may go to a top school, but you may not play for a year. You may not play for 2 years. But what you're doing during that process is you're learning, you're being patient, you're learning to overcome adversity and obstacles, and you're fighting for a position. All the kind of values that you're going to need in life when adversity hits you after football. What players are doing these days, they don't start, they want to transfer, or they don't go here because they're not getting enough money. What they're doing is they are setting themselves up for failure in life because life is not going to be that way. And a good coach is there to make, not only great players, but to make great people. And I've always been old school. When I was growing up, my dad would, be very strict with me. There were times when I was young and I couldn't stand, how strict he was. But when I got older, I thanked him and said, those were the best things you could have ever done for me. And I think that we sometimes lack that in this current climate.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things too, Adam. I think it's also translation. That sometimes it's good for you to hear what you don't want to hear. Like you said, about your dad telling you that. Same thing over here with my parents. They always told me what I did not want to hear, but I thanked them for it later. It made me a better person. And that's what Shiano needs to adapt. Instead of money. And then people will be like, oh, Shiano's too old school. We need to get rid of him. And then there comes that problem. There's no winning either way, Adam. That's the thing that frustrates me about this situation. Because you could set a culture to say, guess what? You come to Rutgers, we're going to play hard-nosed football. We're going to be physical, and I'm going to teach you life lessons, but we're going to win football games. But then they're like, where's the money? There's no winning. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and I would say to a player who was asking about money, you know what? Why don't you go somewhere else? Because we're looking for people who want to win a national championship. And if you stick with the process and learn how to overcome adversity and hold yourself up to the highest standard, you will be successful. And you know what that does? That kind of culture weeds out the elements that do not belong there. It weeds out the mediocrity. But the perfect example of this is when Rutgers lost 42-10 at home against a pretty average Wisconsin team. In the press conference, what did he say? Yeah, we didn't show up today. I got to coach better. I'm not sure what it was. No. What you should be saying is this is completely unacceptable for Rutgers football. And Rutgers football will never accept this again. And these players are going to hear about it. And if they play like this again, they won't be playing at Rutgers anymore. And that's what's lacking. We need a culture change.
Adam, you're preaching it because that's the way I feel. I've said this multiple times to people that will listen. As a coach, you need to get on them. You need to tell them what they don't want to hear. And it's like after a loss like that, like you just said, to a mediocrity Wisconsin team who missed the bowl game, which makes it even worse now for Rutgers, the next game they should come out with their heads on fire and want to high step it into that end zone.
Yep, you're damn right. And that's why, when you coach people like that, that's when they win those battles on 4th and 1 from the 4th and goal from the 2-yard line. That's when, when the times get tough, they come out on top. And I think we're living in a culture where players are coddled, where they're looking for instant gratification, or where they're valuing money over developing as people. And when you do that, you're setting them up for failure in life. When I teach my students and they ask me, was my paper good or my exam good? I don't enjoy saying, no, it wasn't. And I don't enjoy seeing the disappointment on their faces, but I know that I'm helping them in the long run, even if they don't see it now. And if Shiano doesn't do that, next year it's going to be worse than this year, and we're never going to get the kinds of players that are going to win championships. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like you, Adam. I have all the respect in the world for Greg Schiano. He's a legendary head coach. But if Greg Schiano does not want to set a culture, you don't ever want to get to this point with a coach. But you may have to, the AD and company may have to sit him down and be like, listen, we have higher standards here. We respect everything that you've done for Rutgers and how you've put us back on the map, and we're going to bowl games. But we want to be in the conversation for the Big Ten title. We want to be playing in the higher bowl games. We don't want to be stuck down here in the Rate Bowl every year.
Yeah.
You don't want to have those conversations. But if it doesn't get fixed, like you said, Adam, it could come to that. I hope it doesn't for his sake, but it could.
Yeah, again, great points. I mean, it's funny that with the way we're talking about how we should treat young people, it's like in a way, I feel like I'm doing the same thing with Coach Schiano. It's like I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Coach, but I'm going to tell you something you don't want to hear. You're not creating the kind of culture that's going to, much less win championships, contend for the Big Ten. And sometimes you got to tell people that you respect and admire the truth. And when you do that, I think you're helping them and making them better, and you're creating the kind of values that will make not only the team successful, but the people successful in life. And I worry that in the last, decade or so, our young people are getting the wrong message from coaches, from teachers, in which they're not being held to those old school values. And at the end of the day, when football ends, if they don't have those values, I don't think they'll be successful. I think we do a disservice to them.
Mm-hmm. And complacency, Adam, is one of the biggest things I see in the sport today. Yep. And it's not just Rutgers. It's with a lot of teams. Like Rutgers, since this is the Rutgers channel, they have shown it a couple times this year, complacency.
Yep.
And that goes on the coach. Because as the coach, you're supposed to get your players ready. Even after a big win or big loss, you're supposed to be like, enjoy it, take 24 hours, but be back at practice. We got to get ready for Wisconsin this week.
Yeah.
Let's hit it again.
You're damn right, because that reminds me of when Alabama beat Georgia and the next week lost to Vanderbilt. It's like so many people cannot handle success. People think failure is bad. You know what might be worse? Success, because when you get success, you start thinking how impressive you are, and you get complacent, and you think you can beat anybody, and you don't think you have to go through the blood, sweat, and tears of preparation that you used to do. And that will kill you in life, and that will lead to inconsistency.
Mm-hmm. And like tonight, Adam, I'll say this. On paper, like you said, Kansas State, on paper, they're a more talented team. But on the field, what I saw tonight, even with Rutgers having all their young players, that's a coin flip game if they played it in a best of 7, in my opinion. I think you could play that in a best of 7 series, and it's a coin flip each time.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to I think it would go to a 7th game, and I think it would come down to those critical plays, and to be successful when competition is so close and the margin of error is so small, you got to have that mindset and those values. That's where training and preparation and culture comes in. If you listen to Greg Schauer's press conferences, he doesn't sound angry. He doesn't sound like he's going to demand more of his players. And, like I said, Coach, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. But if you're creating a culture where good is the standard, you'll never be great.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I want to say this, though, Adam. There's a couple more things I want to touch on with you. Coming into this year, Rutgers, generally everyone would say their ceiling is 6-6. And
Right.
that's fair and you've even said that. But coming into this year, Adam, I had Rutgers going 9-3. I was disappointed because, and I can only imagine how Rutgers and you feel, but that was my ceiling for you guys. I was like 9-3. They'll get a really good bowl bid, and it's going to be a nice year for Rutgers. The schedule kind of lightened up for them. I like what they have. And it was just disappointing because it's just like everything fell in place for Rutgers, and it still wasn't enough.
You just hit the nail on the head. Everything was lined up for them. And I think the turning point in the season was the Wisconsin game. After they lost to Nebraska, they've got Wisconsin at home, a Wisconsin team that lost, 42-17 at home to Alabama. And they came out and were terrible. Instead, they should have come out with a sense of urgency and a fire that said we cannot be beaten. They should have prepared with a standard that winning is the only thing that matters. It's unacceptable to lose. It's unacceptable. Instead, they came out the opposite, and I think that reflects culture. People often say it reflects coaching. I think that if you do not have a good culture, you will not be a good coach, because no matter what you try to get these kids to do, if they don't have that kind of hunger and that kind of urgency, they won't be successful. And what happens after football ends when they face adversity in life, personally or professionally? What's going to be their response to failure? What's going to be their response to adversity? Well, I just don't see that culture at Rutgers. And you're right. It is extremely disappointing, because if we couldn't do it this year, one must wonder, when will we ever do it?
Mm-hmm. And I got to say this, Adam. You all are some dedicated fans. Your stadium, you all, the blackout game y'all had on Fox, that was a scene. And I knew Rutgers fans were legit, but I didn't know they were that legit. Y'all have passion. The fan base is there.
Yeah.
It's like you said, the culture, though. If Schiano could get this culture right with the fan base behind them, Rutgers is going to be a team to be scared of in the Big Ten. I'm telling you right now, they're good.
I appreciate that, and thank you. I think that you're exactly right. And when you look at that Washington game, those fans came out. That stadium was rocking. But how can you beat Washington I think it was 21-18, and then lose by 32 to Wisconsin. That is just not acceptable. And the players need to know that. The players need to feel the pain of losing, and they need to feel, bad about failing, and they need to learn how to respond to it. I think that Schiano doesn't always impart that to his players in the way that a Bear Bryant would, a Nick Saban, a Bill Parcells, and I think what you see on the field reflects that culture, and that's why we're 7-6 when I think we could have been, quite frankly,
9-3.
9-3. Yeah, I was going to say 9-3.
Because there was a lot of games, like you said, that could have went either way. But the thing with me is, Adam, I agree with everything you're saying. The thing with me is sometimes you figure out what a team is after they get punched in the mouth or they take a real heartbreaking loss.
Right.
And this to a lesser extent, but I'm going to use Michigan, right? They were coming in riding the high of beating Ohio State. They won the game. They won the Big Ten 2 years in a row. And then they laid an egg against TCU.
Yep.
And everyone was like, haha, you lost to the Big 12 team that has no defense. And all I can remember is J.J. McCarthy saying, we'll be back, I guarantee it. And They were back the next year and they won the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because that team was an old school national championship team because, number one, they were a team. Number two, everybody believed in the standard of it's national championship or bust. And when they went into the Rose Bowl against Alabama, everyone thought Alabama was going to walk all over them. And they completely dominated Alabama. And they dominated because they had that mindset. And that's why they went into Columbus and won 13-10 this year. I mean, you got to have that kind of culture where a Michigan team that really had a bad year goes into Columbus and knocks off Ohio State. Those are the kind of players, and that's the kind of culture that allows that to happen. Rutgers, on the other hand, goes to Ohio State last year and plays them pretty close for about 2.5 quarters. Well, it's not good enough. And, good is not good enough. And I do hope I've invited Coach Schiano on the show, and I hope he comes because that's going to be the first question I ask him. And the points you raise are right on the money, and I appreciate them.
And the thing, too, is, Adam, I feel like Rutgers, they fit this scenario perfect. They need to watch that. Just that clip right there where he says, we'll be back, I guarantee it. He didn't say, we'll be back. He said, I guarantee it. That's what stuck out. He guaranteed they would be back. You know how hard it is to win it, let alone win the Big Ten, but then to also say you're going to be back in the playoffs and you're going to win the whole thing? That's hard.
Yeah, and then he goes and does it. And you know what he did in that game in the Rose Bowl? They were down, and it was a 4th and 2, and they converted. He threw a pass, I think, in the flat to Blake Corum. But because of his mindset, because of that culture, they were prepared to succeed in those critical moments, whereas Rutgers is not, and I think that showed tonight.
Mm-hmm. And it's just one of them. It's a very disappointing end to a season. And overall, I'll say this, Adam, on Rutgers. Going forward, like you said, you got to see those changes because as a fan, and just as a fan of college football, I want to see Rutgers succeed. Not just for you guys, but for us as a consumer because it's good for the sport to have variety. To have the Rutgers every now and then come in there and stun some people or stun a Michigan State. It's good for the sport. It's good to see a team like Rutgers who is not a very big school, doesn't have that much NIL, but they could be like the Indiana and prove any given year when things line up, it can happen.
Absolutely. And, I want it to be where when a team like Oregon next year comes to Piscataway, you know what? College game day is going to be there because this is a game Rutgers could win. And that's, the people in New Jersey want to see this happen. But what we keep seeing is more of the same mediocrity. And it would be great for the sport if Rutgers could be competitive. And the really sad thing about this is when they have the potential to do it. That's what's so disappointing. They do have enough on their roster where they could accomplish this. And the only reason they're not, I believe, is because of their culture. And it is disappointing, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you this, Adam. When did you know, deep down in your heart from this year, when did you know that Rutgers was stuck in mediocrity? Was it that Wisconsin game where you were like, I had hope, but now I don't? What was that game for you that really flipped the switch of this is still the same old Rutgers?
Nebraska.
Nebraska?
Yeah, because when I saw them play Nebraska, and when they had Kyle Monangai, who was one of the best backs, in my view, in the Big Ten, first and goal at the 2-yard line, and on 4 tries they couldn't get it in, then I thought this is going to be the same Rutgers. But I reserved judgment a little bit for the next week against Wisconsin. And when they came out and played like that, I knew for certain.
You were like, this is still the Rutgers that's stuck at 6-6, 7-5.
Yeah, I said to myself, what Rutgers is going to do is they're going to pull off a few more wins, but they're going to suffer more crushing defeats, which is what happened against Illinois when on 4th and 6 or 7 from the 50-yard line with like 22 seconds left, they give up a touchdown pass. And then UCLA losing by 3, 35-32. But I felt like after the Nebraska game that my sense was that it's going to be more of the same.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I kind of want to take a second here with you, Adam, to look forward a little bit. Not too far forward, but as you know, for like the coaching staff, is there any changes you would like to see? You know, we talked about Schiano, of course, but is there any coaching changes you'd like to see?
Yes. I want to see them get a top-notch elite defensive coordinator. And I want to see them get a defensive line coach because what I think will change Rutgers football is if they become a school like with a Michigan-type defense. That's where I would start. And I think they need to spend the money to get an elite coach on the defensive side because I just think that, I mean, their defensive coordinator resigned like 2 weeks ago or so. That's where they need to start. And Schiano, here's what I'll say about Schiano. I love Greg Schiano, but it's important for him to do the kind of cultural changes that we're talking about. And if he doesn't, I don't know if he'll be the man for the job.
And that's one of those where you have to have those hard conversations. It's almost like breaking up with someone, to use that analogy. I know some people may say that's a bad analogy, but it's kind of like breaking up with someone that you still like, but you're just not in love with anymore. And I feel like Schiano will always still have a place in Rutgers history. I think the fans will always still love him. But there comes a point in time where, like you said, Adam, after next year, if there's not some cultural changes or we're not seeing Rutgers show the improvement, it may be time to sit him down and say, listen, what is it you want our program to be? Because we know what we want it to be. Our fans know what we want it to be. They have voiced their opinion. What do you want it to be? And see if it lines up. And if it doesn't, you have to make that decision. You have to be like, listen, we wish you all the best, but it's time to cut the ties. Like Pete Carroll with the Seahawks.
Yep.
Like the way they did him. He didn't want to leave, but he knew it was best for the Seahawks. Even though they still love and admire him and what they did for him, he still did what was best. And maybe that's what Schiano needs to do.
Yeah. That's why when you asked about coaching changes, I was a little bit hesitant to talk about Schiano because I have such respect for him and it hurts to say it. But the truth of the matter is, I think that Greg Schiano, I admire him for taking Rutgers from being a bad team to being a good team. I think we may need a different coach to make them a great team. And when Bill Belichick signed with North Carolina, I honestly, the first thing I thought was, man, if he had come to Rutgers.
And that's what I will say too, Adam. That's one of them, like you said. You know, I have respect for him as a college football fan for what he did. Like, hey, I think honestly, he'll probably be retired up in the Rutgers Raptors, up in the stadium. I think, in my opinion, that's how important he was to you all. But like you said, when Bill Belichick got hired, that sent a statement because Bill Belichick's old school. He's old school as it gets.
Yep.
So there still is hope for the old guys. Schiano, this is your wake-up call. Please, Schiano, we don't want to have to do this. Well, not me, but Adam and his Rutgers fans. They don't want to have to kick you out.
Yeah, I think that as much as I love Coach Schiano and I admire everything he's done for Rutgers, my feeling is that it's not in his personality to be the way that a Belichick or a Bill Parcells would be or a Nick Saban would be, but I think that's what we need.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And I'll say this too, and a lot of it goes into also with Schiano, you know, besides the culture, we got to see what roster changes he makes. Because like you said, you want to see more beefy physicality on that defensive line. Like the secondary. The secondary looked good tonight. Although Kansas State was more focused on the running attack, we didn't really get to see the young guys as much as I would like. I would have preferred – that's when Kansas State, when y'all drew them, I was like, at least we'll see Rutgers D-line in action. But as far as their secondary, their young guys, I'm like, this is a good matchup for them because Kansas State's run heavy and then throw some.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I want to see our defensive line disrupt the quarterback more and get that push so that we're thrown off the quarterback's timing. I just don't see us winning in the trenches like Michigan last year. They won in the trenches. We need to have those kind of roster changes, but I think that those kind of roster changes are an extension of a coach who wants to win a national championship. And I think that Schiano is kind of like I think he's a transitional coach who is going to bring Rutgers back to legitimacy. And I think there's going to be a coach after that. If Rutgers is truly committed to being a national title contender, the next coach is going to be more of an old school coach. And I think, you know, someone like a Belichick or someone from the old school mode of thought is what we need.
And Adam, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent here, but this is what is upsetting. I see people all the time when it comes to Rutgers. I see people pick on your offense, that they need to be more modern. They need to be more Lincoln Riley-esque. Rutgers' offense is not the problem. It's the defensive line.
Yep.
I keep trying to drill it in people's heads, especially my family, because they're like, if Rutgers would just be something like USC or something like that, they would be able to beat all these teams. I'm like, it's not the offense. The offense is just fine. Like, the offense is doing their part for the most part. Every now and then they lay an egg.
Well, I agree with you. And as far as Lincoln Riley goes, look at his record the last 2 years. Defense wins championships, and Michigan proved that last year. And historically, that's what wins championships. Our offense, at the very least, our offense is efficient. And if we have a great defense, we can win games 20-13, 17-14. But as tonight showed, giving up 44 points, we don't have the defense, and that's where we got to start.
And Adam, if I was to tell you Rutgers scores 41 in this game, you probably would have told me they would have won, correct?
100%.
Like,
100%.
that's not on the offense.
100%. They would have won. The offense scored 41 points tonight. There's nothing about the offense that is to blame in this game. It is the defense, and it was shocking how bad they played. But anyway, I'm going to end the show shortly. So, but I want to say, man, this was a great call, and I hope you call in. We're going to be on every week. I hope you keep calling in because it's always a great discussion with you.
Yes. And Adam, I hope for you for our ride off, I hope Rutgers has more bright days ahead for you.
Thank you.
I don't want you to be ranting and raving every week. Although it might get views, but be ranting and raving about how Rutgers lost to Iowa 3-0.
You're right. I'd rather be happier than ranting and raving every week.
Yeah, and it's much healthier, but good luck to you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. All right. Great call there from Austin. And we appreciate everyone calling in tonight for your insightful comments as we wrap up the 2024 season of Rutgers Scarlet Knights football. But the good news is this is the beginning, not the end for this show, because we will be on every week throughout the offseason to discuss recruiting, the future of Rutgers football, the players, and we hope you join us and keep calling in and providing your comments. And we look forward to a great discussion and to an off season where recruiting hopefully provides us with some great players and hope for a future for Rutgers that will be unlike its past. We'll be back on Monday at 7 p.m. We'll hope to see you then, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Happy holidays.